Friends, welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me, and we're starting. Nancy Moore was 28 years old, and she worked in the accounting department of an insurance company. It was 3 p.m. when her husband Jack called her. "Hi, Nancy, are you working overtime today?" Nancy sensed something was amiss in Jack's voice. "Are you okay, Jack?" "What's the matter?" Nancy asked. She was a little worried. "I'm fine. I got home early today and wanted to know if you'd be here by 5:30. There's no overtime today. Do you want me to leave now, darling?" Nancy asked. "Don't worry, I'll just rest for now. See you later." Jack hung up the phone. Nancy was sure that something was bothering Jack. She immediately went to her boss's office. "Nancy, we need to go through some files during overtime today," Alan Perkins reminded Nancy with a big smile before she could say anything. "Alan, I'm here to ask permission to leave early. Are you okay?" Alan frowned. "I'm fine, it's Jack. I think he's unwell. He just called me from home." "Do what you need to do, Nancy. We'll catch up next time." She looked at her boss and nodded. When Nancy entered the house, she found Jack dozing on the couch. "I'm at home, dear. Are you feeling all right?" "Yes, of course." Jack sat down. "I'm a little tired. You came early." He glanced at his watch. "I took time off from work immediately after your call." "I know you, Jack Moore. Something's bothering you." Nancy sat down next to him on the sofa. "The fact is that we need to talk." Jack turned his face and looked into Nancy's eyes. "Oh, my God." Nancy thought about it. "Please, I don't want any bad news." She took a deep breath. "What do you want to talk about, Jack?" "What is it?" she asked fearfully. "I do not know where to start. You must admit that we have been estranged from each other lately." Nancy frowned. "I'm going to be honest with you, Nancy. I've stopped loving you." "What?" Nancy twitched. "Dear, we are a married couple, and we have many goals for our future. You know I'm going to stop taking the pills in a couple of months. As we have already discussed, I want to have our first child by the beginning of next year. We will buy our own house and—" "I know, Nancy." Jack intervened. "I met someone." "Someone?" Nancy couldn't hold back her tears. "Yes, a young woman, and we are in love. I'm sorry, but there's no easy way to tell you this." "But, Jack, how could you do this to me, to us?" Nancy was still trying to process what was happening. "We have known each other for 5 years and have been married for 3. In the last 6 months, you've changed and started neglecting me." "I've never neglected you, Jack. I've always been here for you. You started with your weekly overtime work, sometimes twice a week. But Jack, I did it for us. We need money to buy a house. Then you started your weekly bachelorette parties with your colleagues. After that, you went shopping every Saturday for a couple of hours a day. I'm working so hard, Jack. I need to get some rest for myself. Have you ever thought about me?" Jack almost screamed. "Instead of meeting with your colleagues, we could meet once a week on a date. We could go shopping together on Saturdays." Nancy stared at the floor. Now she understood what she had done. "Please, Jack, I love you. We can sort this out." "Nancy, 3 months ago, when I talked to you about these problems, you were angry. You even raised your voice at me. Do you remember?" "I'm really sorry, Jack, if I hurt you. 3 months ago, I didn't think so. Now I know that I only cared about myself. Please, Jack, give me another chance. Let's work on our marriage." 3 months ago, I was completely depressed. During my lunch break, this woman came and sat next to me. She works in another department. She noticed that I was crying. She talked to me. A couple of days later, she asked me what was wrong with my life. I told her everything. I needed to share my pain with someone, and she became a shoulder to cry on. Is she the one? Yes, Nancy. She's the one. And gradually we felt an emotional attraction and finally fell in love with each other. What's her name? What does she do? Nancy asked with tears running down her face. Her name and what she does don't matter. It's better for you not to know her. Were you too close? Yes, Nancy. I'm sorry. How could you? Nancy screamed. Nancy, tell me, when was the last time we made love? So, it was, Nancy struggled to remember. It was a month ago, and it wasn't making love. We just made love quickly because you were so tired then. During these last 6 months, you've always been tired. We only made love 3 times. But, Jack, you should have asked. You should have done something. Nancy, love is a part of a couple's life. This happens naturally. There's nothing to ask. So you got something from her that I didn't give you. Yes, and even more than that. Nancy frowned. She's doing what you've always refused to do, Jack continued. But I never knew you liked it, Nancy protested. I would rather say that I get more pleasure from it. She's always trying to find sensitive spots on my body. I'm sorry, Jack, if I couldn't be enough for you in bed. You will be served tomorrow. I submitted an application due to irreconcilable differences. Today, I took 50% of our savings. We will keep our respective cars. We both work. Alimony is out of the question. The lease on this house expires in a few months. I'll stay here. I'm moving into the guest room tonight. You'd better call your parents and explain everything. I suppose you'll move in with them. Will she move here in the meantime? No, she won't do that. She doesn't want to touch your stuff, our furniture, or anything else that reminds her of you and our time together. In fact, we have already found an apartment in the new Lakeshore Heights complex. We chose an apartment with a balcony that overlooks the lake. The building will be ready in a couple of months, which is good for me, since I will need to leave here almost at the same time. Lakeshore Heights, Nancy thought. That's where I was planning to move, and I wanted to convince Jack to buy an apartment there. But why don't you move in with her? Nancy asked. She has a roommate in her two-room apartment, and initially they decided not to bring any third parties. For this reason, we always had to book a motel room, and sometimes we did it in the back seat of my car. Jack, I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you and grow old with you. Is there any way we can work on our marriage? I'll turn a blind eye to your 3-month escape with this girl. I will never bring this up, I promise. I'll give you everything she gives you. I will never refuse you anything. We can go to a consultation. Unfortunately, Nancy, I've already made up my mind. Jack stood up. I'm going to take my things to the guest room and take a nap. What if I refuse the divorce? I'm going to fight this. You'll spend a lot of money on lawyers' fees. And in the worst case, I'll just go far away with her. I'll stay married to you, but I won't live with you. You can't do this. It's illegal. It really is. There is no law in this country that could force me to stay here with you. Jack, don't go, Nancy exclaimed. Later, she called her parents and briefly explained the situation. Half an hour later, they were sitting next to her in the living room. How could he do this to you? John, Nancy's father, was furious. He can't give up 3 years of marriage because you haven't taken care of him for a couple of months, Mary shouted. He should have talked to you and solved all the problems. It was my fault, Mom. Nancy wiped away her tears. I neglected him, and that pushed him into the arms of this woman. He needs to understand that you did all this for both of you, and you needed some time for yourself because of the hard work. John said, I want to talk to him. Please call him here. No, Dad. He's resting. You can talk to him in a couple of days when you calm down. Will you pack your things and come with us? We'll help you, Mary told her daughter. No, Mom. I'll stay, Nancy said while her parents were confused. I'll try to get him back. Are you sure? Both parents asked at the same time. Yes. Okay, we're leaving now. But if anything happens, just call us. Do you understand? Yes, Dad. Nancy went to her room and cried herself to sleep. In the middle of the night, she woke up and went down to the kitchen. She found an empty pizza box next to the trash can. He didn't wake me up for dinner. He ordered food just for himself. Nancy thought about it. She drank a glass of water and went back to bed. The next morning, when she left her room, she heard the garage door slam and Jack's car sped away. She packed up and went to work. Before lunch, Alan Perkins, her boss, called Nancy into his office. You've been acting weird since this morning. I think you were crying. Is everything all right at home? He asked. Jack is divorcing me. What? How? Is he really? He found someone else. He's in love with her. I'm really sorry. He said I was neglecting him, and it's true. Nancy lowered her head. He found solace in a young woman working for his company. Do you need to get some rest? You can take as many days off as you want. I'll let you know when I need them. In the meantime, I prefer to come to work, but I won't stay up late. I understand. That day, Nancy cooked Jack's favorite dish. When he returned home, the kitchen was filled with fragrance. He went straight to his room without saying a word to Nancy. Later, he went down, washed, and changed his clothes. "I have a date tonight," he told Nancy. "I have prepared for both of us." Nancy almost cried. "You'd better not cook for me, since we'll be eating separately from now on." "As you wish, Jack. When should I expect you?" "I don't know what time I'll be back." Jack headed for the door. "I love you, Jack." Tears were streaming down her face. Jack closed the door behind him. The next day, when Nancy returned home, Jack was already there. Nancy put away her purse and went to the kitchen to pour herself a glass of water. The doorbell rang. "It's for you," Jack said, not looking at Nancy. She frowned and went to open the door for the man in the suit. "Are you Mrs. Nancy Moore?" "Yes, it is. You have been served." He handed her an envelope from Manila. "Have a nice evening, ma'am." The man turned and walked away. Nancy almost fainted when she took the envelope. She had to lean against the wall. "Please sign this and let's move on," Jack said to her back. Nancy turned around and looked Jack straight in the eye. "So I've been neglecting you for 6 months, and you've forgotten all the good times we've had together. I told you that I would change, and I will change. I will be the best wife and the best friend. Please, I'm begging you, Jack. I'm only asking for one more chance. It was a mistake. Can't you forgive me?" "A mistake? Well, how can it be a mistake if you planned everything in advance? It's not what you think. You tell me what I should think, about how well we used to spend time together. So you put an end to it. And trust me, the time I'm spending with her right now is much better than the time we spent together. Just sign the papers, okay?" Jack went to his room. Nancy sat down and opened the envelope with trembling hands. She looked at the documents and signed them. Later, when she entered her room, she heard Jack talking on the phone. His door was open. "Yes, baby," he said. "She was served this afternoon. The countdown has begun. I love you too, honey. You're going to give up the pills right now. It's a good idea. We can get married right after the divorce with your bloated belly. You're going to look fantastic in your wedding dress. What? We will make love like a dog in your white dress and with a dangling pregnant belly. Oh my God. You turn me on." Nancy went into her room and closed the door behind her. "If only I could go back in time," she told herself. The next day, she woke up early, left her papers on the kitchen table, and drove to work. There she called her parents and told them about her situation. They asked her to pack her things and leave the house. She only replied that she would do so. She later informed Alan Perkins that she had signed the divorce papers. "Is it really hard for you?" he asked. "You can't imagine how much. It's like the whole world has collapsed on me," Nancy sobbed. "You shouldn't let yourself be humiliated. You're still young. Maybe life has other good things in store for you in the future." "Jack was my future, and I messed it up. Can we go for a drink after work to relieve some pressure?" Alan Perkins asked. "It all started with a drink after work, remember?" Nancy turned around and went to her workplace. As the days passed, Jack returned home late after dinner at the restaurant. When he was at home, he made himself sandwiches. He did the shopping himself. Nancy began to behave more provocatively at home, walking around in shorts and a tank top without a bra. Sometimes she would come into the kitchen wrapped in a towel when Jack was there. She played the music and songs he liked the most. Sometimes she bowed to him. She always waited for him in the evening and tried to start a conversation. Sometimes he refused, pretending to be tired, and went to his room. But sometimes he would sit down and listen to her. She never talked about another woman. She always found it necessary to bring back their old memories together, where she saw the sparkle in his eyes and the smile on his face. But then he changed the subject. On weekends, Jack mowed the grass or found something to do while avoiding Nancy. In the evening, he went out alone and returned very late. One Friday, she called Jack and asked him out on a date that night. It would be dinner and dancing. He agreed. She was extremely happy. Even her colleagues noticed a change in her. She came home early and got ready. They had a good dinner, talked about everything except their real situation. At some point, Nancy felt that everything that had happened in the last 6 months was like a nightmare, and she just woke up, leaving everything behind. It was as if they were still the madly in love couple they used to be. After dinner, they took their drinks and went to sit near the dance floor. A man came and asked Nancy to dance. She looked at Jack, who shrugged. She politely declined, and the man left. "Will you dance with me?" she asked Jack. Without saying a word, Jack stood up, took her hand and dragged her onto the dance floor. They danced 5 songs in a row. They moved to the beat of the music. As they walked back to their table, a slow song started playing. Without saying a word, Nancy pulled Jack onto the dance floor, snuggled up to him and rested her head on his shoulder. He could feel her breath on his neck. For several weeks, she wanted to hug him, feel his body next to her, and make passionate love to him. She pressed her crotch against him and felt the bulge in his pants. Holding Jack tightly to her, she slowly rocked her hips, rubbing his crotch. She didn't care if people were watching or what they were thinking. She was with her man and could do whatever she wanted. "Let's go home," Jack whispered in her ear. Nancy smiled. On the way back, Jack concentrated on driving while Nancy sat and hummed the songs they had just danced together. After Jack parked his car in the garage, Nancy ran to her room, left the door open, undressed, and lay down on the bed waiting for her husband. Jack walked down the hall, past Nancy's room, without even looking at her, and headed for the guest room. Shocked, Nancy lay on the bed, trying to figure out what had happened. She jumped up and rushed into the guest room. She opened the door without knocking. Jack was shirtless. "What happened? Why don't you take your wife? It's been a few weeks since you haven't touched me, and I'm fucking horny. And I know you are too, because I could feel your boner on the dance floor." "Nancy, we're getting divorced. We can't be close. We're still married, and I'm still your wife. Please, darling, make love to me." She went up to Jack and tried to hug him. He avoided her and sat down on his bed. "Take what belongs to you, Jack. You can possess every inch of my body. Do whatever you want with me. All my holes belong to you. I will never refuse you anything." She sat down next to him and tried to kiss him on the lips. He turned away and she touched his cheek. "Please, Jack, don't leave me. Don't divorce me. I love you. I'm just asking for your forgiveness. I know we can work this out. Let's just forget about these stupid 6 months, as if they never existed. You can do this, Jack, because you don't hate me." "It's a little late, Nancy." "It's never too late, Jack. Your weakness led you to someone else. You were vulnerable because of the situation I created. I was stupid and selfish. I realized my mistakes and I promise that it will never happen again. I will be the best wife on this earth." Jack didn't say anything. There was a distant look in his eyes. Nancy knelt down in front of him and took both of his hands. "I'll be your slave, Jack. Your wish is my law. You can beat me every day. Punish me for what I did to you. Humiliate me. But Jack, be my husband until death do us part." She began to cry. "I can't." Jack looked her straight in the eye. "But why can't you?" "Because I can't cheat on her." Nancy jumped up in anger. She screamed. "By the way, who is she? Can't you see that she's a breakup girl? This fool seduced you and played on your weakness. How do you know she won't cheat on you? She won't do that. No matter what you tell me now, what you're going to do, she's going to be more than that." Resigned, she went to the door and stopped. "I'm tired, Jack. This divorce is eating me up inside. First thing tomorrow, I'll call my parents to come and help me pack my things," she said, without turning to face him. "I really regret my mistakes. Please forgive me for the pain I caused you. I wish I were wiser. I wish you a happy life with your future wife." She went to her room with her head down. Nancy's parents arrived early the next morning. "Dark circles under the eyes, sleepless nights again?" Mary asked. Nancy didn't answer. "You should have left this place the first time he dropped a bomb on you," John told his daughter. "I know, Dad, but I wanted to bring him back. Just forget about him. There are a lot of young people who will fall in love with you in the blink of an eye," Mary spat out. "I have to say a few words to this asshole. Wake him up," John said angrily. "Just leave him alone. You're wasting your time, Dad. Mom, come help me with the packing, please." "You wanted to talk." Jack was coming down the stairs. "Yes, you idiot." John flushed with anger. "You're a real fool." "Dad, please." Nancy shook her head. "I need to tell this piece of shit what I think of him." John turned to Jack. "Because of your male ego, you can't accept that your wife should have some private time for herself too. She worked very hard, overtime, and for what? to bring in extra money so that both of you can buy a house as soon as possible as planned. Maybe she went a little overboard with her bachelorette parties or Saturday shopping, but she needed to be able to relax. She admits that she made a mistake and apologizes. And what are you doing? You cheat on her with the first fool you meet and make her cry out of love for you. Jack was silent and stared intently into John's eyes. Nancy grabbed her father's arm and tried to drag him upstairs to her room. The first day you brought him to our house, I knew he wouldn't suit you, Nancy. You were so much in love that I kept silent and prayed that I was wrong. Come on, John, Mary was comforting him. We have more important things to do. Mother and daughter took John's hands and led him upstairs. Jack opened the door and found John's van in the middle of the driveway. He decided to walk 2 blocks to the nearest cafe. 3 months later, on the eve of the hearing, Nancy took a few days off from work. Together with her parents, they went to spend some time at their summer house. She wanted to be away from the crowd. She knew that the divorce would be resolved by the judge and did not want to attend the trial. She didn't want to be bothered by her friends and colleagues. She asked her parents to turn off their mobile phones. The next morning at 11 o'clock, there was a knock on the door. The 3 of them looked at each other. No one knew where they were. Mary opened the door to Jack, who was standing at the entrance. I have something to tell Nancy, and it would be good if you were present, Jack told Nancy's parents. How dare you come here, you idiot? Get out of my territory now, John shouted. Nancy was silent. She didn't know what to do. I tried to call and even went to your house. I assume you have all your mobile phones turned off. Jack turned to Mary, ignoring John. I knew all of you would be here. He was still standing in the doorway. What do you want, Jack? I found the courage to ask Nancy. The judge has already given permission for the divorce at 10 o'clock this morning. From today on, we are alone. Did you come all this way just to tell my daughter that you're single again? Mary raised her voice. Please leave before I break your jaw. John pointed at Jack. My daughter has been suffering for the last 3 months, and you came here today to put the last nail in the coffin. I suffered for 6 months, and no one ever noticed it, Jack shouted. Everyone was stunned by Jack's sudden outburst. He pushed Mary aside and entered the room. I've never had a mistress, Jack snapped at Nancy. I've never cheated on you, Nancy. It was a setup. But why? Nancy was shocked by Jack's revelation. John and Mary froze. Why? Can you say the same thing? Jack asked. Tell me what? That you've never cheated on me? Nancy suddenly felt that her legs were getting weak. She couldn't stand. She collapsed into a chair. Jack turned to his former father-in-law. For all these 6 months, this fool has been making love to her boss, Alan Perkins. The room was suddenly completely silent. John and Mary couldn't believe their ears. They looked at their daughter. She couldn't meet their eyes. She started crying. All those overtime, hen parties or Saturday shopping, it was all a hoax. You made love to him in motels or in the back seat of his car. I had a private investigator following you, and I have a DVD, a lot of DVDs. Please, darling, John begged Nancy. Tell me it's not true, that he's lying. I'm really sorry, Nancy exclaimed. I could have divorced you with all the evidence I had, but I wanted to do something to make you suffer, so that you would feel the same as me, so that you would know what it means to be deceived. I wanted you to be hurt, to feel pain, to bleed. Jack spat. You've done things with him that you've always denied me. You know what I'm talking about. You let him humiliate me when he was inside you. You gave him what belongs to me. You disrespected me. You didn't have time for me, but you spent every spare minute with him. You're the worst fool I know. Nancy began to cry louder. Mary hugged her husband tightly. Turn on your phone. You should have hundreds of calls from work and from Alan. Nancy frowned, picked up her cell phone and turned it on. She had a lot of missed calls and messages. Since we were still married yesterday, my lawyer filed a lawsuit against the insurance company and Alan Perkins. Alienation of affection is still a crime in our state. Oh, no, Nancy exclaimed. According to my lawyer, we can get up to 7 figures. One good benefit of your deception is that you will bring me some money. Jack laughed. Nancy looked at her phone. The missed calls were from her job and from Alan Perkins. She read the last text message. It was from the HR department asking her to call them as soon as possible. She scrolled down to Alan's message. He was raging. By the way, Yesterday, I contacted Alan's wife and gave her a set of DVDs. She said she would send him to the cleaners and prevent him from seeing his 2 children. She even offered to make love to me in revenge. He has a family. Why did you do that? Nancy asked. I didn't do anything. It was you who destroyed their house when you started spreading your legs in front of him. And you know what's funny? I'm going to move in with Mrs. Perkins for a while to rub it in Alan's face, because he's going to have to pay the mortgage anyway while I use his wife in his own bed. It would be better if you left now, Jack, John said. Right now we have to deal with our own suffering. I'm not done yet. Jack growled at John and turned to Nancy. I'm sure the insurance company has already fired you. So did Alan. He used you after work at your workplace and demanded overtime for you. I don't think he'll get another job in the financial sector. Nancy couldn't look Jack in the eye. She just shook her head. By the way, last month I lost a bag with a set of your famous DVDs, and this morning I found out that they were uploaded to the internet with your names, phone numbers, and addresses. Jack grinned. Don't worry about getting fired. I'm sure you'll get a job in the industry. Oh my God. Nancy lost consciousness. Now I'm done. Jack walked to the door and turned to face John. This asshole doesn't want anything to do with all of you and doesn't want to see you again. This fool can rot in hell. He turned and left the room.